now just give you a brief history of the state of elections in the country from 1992 to date. So let's take a look at these figures and statistics here. A history of hiccups of elections in Kenya. We start off with 1992. Now, this was the first multi-party election since the reintroduction of multi-party politics in Kenya. And of course, by the time this was happening, the political landscape in the country was characterized by some tribal and ethnic-based violence prior to any election period. Now, let's take you to the 1992 election. Now, just before that, there were flare-ups of violence in several parts of the country. Of course, first off, one of the hotspots in the country was at the coast, where we saw election violence that was taking place between natives of the coast and those from upcountry who were perceived to be outsiders. This led to the infamous Kaya Bombo killings. A commission of inquiry was instituted into that. We did not get the results of that, and there were also other hotspot areas like Molo and Burnt Forest. Now, these are some of the claims: ballot stuffing, targeted ethnic violence like we have just told you about in Molo, Burnt Forest and at the coast. And of course, after that election took place in 1993, Matiba, who was the loser in that election, filed a petition in court. Now, that petition was dismissed by the court. Why? Because he did not personally sign that petition. At the time, he was physically incapacitated, had given the power of attorney to his wife, and was unable to sign it. That decision was made by Justice Riaga Amolo, a decision he would later regret, because during the vetting of magistrates and judges, he was declared as unfit to serve due to that decision. Let's take you now to the next election. 5 years later, we will take you to 1997. Now here, also the same patterns that we saw, and due to the fact that there were no results that were received from the commissions of inquiry, many of the instigators of the violence were said to have been emboldened by the fact that nothing happened in 1992. Aside from the reported cases of violence around the country, there were also concerns over the voter register, reported cases of vote buying in this election. And of course, there was also the case of about 1.5 million to 2 million registered voters who were disenfranchised. Why? Because there was a delay in the release of their ID cards, and this led to some discontentment with the system at the time. After the election, another election petition, 1998, filed by Mwai Kibaki. This petition was dismissed. Again, this time because Mwai Kibaki was unable to serve the president the petition in person. He did that through a Kenya Gazette notice, and the court ruled that he was not able to do that and should have actually served President Moi at the time personally. He took that to a court of appeal. Again, it was rejected. They upheld the lower court's decision. Let's quickly take you to now 2002, which was declared by the EU as Kenya's truly first free and fair elections. Amnesty International even came in to say that there was less poll-related violence compared to previous elections, 1992 and 1997. But there were still some pockets of violence prior to and after the elections. Amnesty International quoting some things here: sticks, stones, swords, a sword, a pistol, 2 rifles that were used in Mount Elgon area. And then we move on to 2007. Many of us remember this one, the infamous post-election violence that took place. The international community was in wide agreement that there were massive errors in the vote tallying process, was marred with incompetence and bogus tallying. We know the violence that erupted after that, leaving at least 1,300 Kenyans dead in that post-election crisis. Hundreds of thousands displaced. Now, this was the first time in this election that we were able to actually put an economic value to the violence that took place after the election. Now, get this, from the closed businesses that took place, 174 billion shillings was lost from closed businesses alone. We've not even factored in the reduction in foreign direct investment. We've also not talked about the drop in numbers of tourists coming in and therefore dropping in foreign exchange. So this was the first time we're able to get that tally. It still, of course, was not complete. This has been a history of the elections that we've had in the country from 1992 to 2007. But we now want to take you to 2013, and for that I want to hand you over to Joe Argeo, who is our managing editor, and he is of course in our talk studio. But before that, let's remind you of our big question tonight regarding this whole story. We're talking about the disbandment of the IEBC. Do you believe that this electoral body should be disbanded. Send us your comments on Twitter at KTN Kenya. The hashtag we're using for our discussion tonight is Facing 2017.